It was 2:37 in the morning when Maria Rodriguez pushed her cleaning cart onto the 23rd floor of the Metropolitan Tower. The smoked glass hallway reflected the lights of the avenue below, a constellation of headlights that never slept. She adjusted her navy blue uniform, tightened her curly hair into a bun, and took a deep breath before swiping her badge at the electronic reader. The door to the technology department opened with a familiar beep, but nothing felt familiar that night. The space, usually silent and dimly lit, was blazing like a Christmas tree. Raised voices echoed through the rows of workstations. Maria stopped at the entrance, confused. At least 20 people occupied the area, all in casual clothes, some still wearing pajamas under hastily thrown-on jackets. Pale faces were fixed on screens, flashing red error messages. A man in glasses ran his hands through his graying hair while muttering incomprehensible numbers. A woman in a wrinkled blazer spoke urgently on the phone, trying to explain something to someone on the other end of the line. Maria recognized a few faces. Engineers she only saw in passing when they arrived early or left late, managers who barely noticed her, presents when she emptied trash cans or wiped down desks. And there, near the glass-walled executive office, was Dr. Arthur Miller himself, founder and CEO of the Miller Investment Group. She had only seen him 3 times in 2 years, always in an impeccable suit and with an imperial demeanor. Now he was gesturing nervously while talking to 2 executives with loosened ties. The young woman hesitated. Should she come back later? But her shift had already started, and she couldn't afford to lose work hours. She decided to do what she always did, become invisible. She pushed the cart, carefully, sticking close to the walls, avoiding the center of the storm. "We've tried restarting the servers 3 times already." A younger engineer's voice sounded desperate. "Nothing changes. The system simply won't process any transactions." That means no client has been able to make transfers, payments, or any operation since 9 o'clock. The woman in the wrinkled blazer hung up the phone and faced the group. "That's over 5 hours of total outage. Do you have any idea of the loss per minute?" Maria started emptying a nearby trash can, but her ears caught every word. Her heart raced. She knew this kind of crisis. She had read about similar cases in programming forums, studied comparable situations in college exercises, service interruption in a banking system, a critical failure that paralyzes everything. "Someone check the log again." Dr. Miller's voice cut through the air like a whip. "There has to be a clue, a recent change, an update, anything." Maria slowly approached an abandoned workstation. The screen showed lines and lines of code, commands she recognized. It was the language she studied late at night, after her shift ended and before heading to college. Python, data structures, API calls. Her brain automatically started processing what she saw, as it always did when faced with code. She shouldn't have been looking. This was confidential, certainly above her access level. But her eyes were already scanning the lines, searching for patterns, identifying functions. And then she saw it. Right there. 2 inverted lines in a transaction validation function. The procedure was calling the balance verification first, and then the user authentication when it should be exactly the opposite. A subtle error, almost imperceptible to someone exhausted and under pressure, but fatal to the system's operation. Maria felt a chill run down her spine. Could that really be it? She checked again, mentally tracing the logical flow of the code. Yes, she was almost certain. If they inverted those 2 lines, the system would start working again. But who was she to say anything? A 22-year-old cleaner, a programming student at a public night college with no formal experience in the field. "We've been at this for 6 hours." An engineer slammed his hand on the desk, making everyone jump. "Someone has to come up with a new idea, for crying out loud." Maria squeezed the cleaning cloth between her hands. Her heart hammered against her ribs. What if she was wrong? What if she spoke up and everyone laughed at her? Worse, what if they fired her for looking where she shouldn't? But what if she was right? She thought of her mother, Mrs. Celia, who sewed until her fingers bled to supplement their income. She thought of the bills piled up on the living room table. She thought of the nights she almost gave up on everything, when the exhaustion was so deep She could barely keep her eyes open during class. She thought of the old notebook where she wrote code by hand because she didn't have a computer at home, until she managed to buy a used laptop the previous year. And she thought of something her father used to say before he left, when she was only 7. Marie, when life gives you a window, don't be afraid to jump, because it might be the only one that opens. She took a step forward, then another. Her legs were shaking, but she kept walking until she was a few feet from the main group of engineers. She cleared her throat, trying to find her voice. No one noticed. "Excuse me." Her voice came out weak, muffled by the nervous chatter. She took a deep breath and tried again, louder. "Excuse me." A few faces turned. An engineer in a plaid shirt looked at her with evident irritation. "Ma'am, this is not a good time. You can come back to clean later." I know, it's not the time, but..." Maria felt her face burn. All eyes were on her now, some confused, others visibly annoyed by the interruption. "I think I saw the problem." A heavy silence fell over the room. Then someone laughed. A short, incredulous laugh. Another engineer crossed his arms and raised an eyebrow. "You saw the problem? Seriously?" "I study programming." The words tumbled out. "Public college programming. And I saw the code on that screen, and there are 2 inverted lines in the validation function. The authentication is being called before the balance verification, but it should be the other way around." More laughter. Not many, but enough for Maria to feel the floor open up beneath her feet. A mocking voice came from the back of the room. "The cleaner is an IT consultant now." "Folks, let's show some respect." Dr. Miller's grave voice cut through the laughter like a blade. He approached Maria, his face tired but his eyes sharp. "Repeat what you said. Slowly." Maria swallowed hard. "There are 2 command lines inverted in the transaction validation function, sir. The order is wrong, that's why the system isn't processing anything." A senior engineer with a grey beard, who had remained silent until then, got up from his chair and walked over to the station Maria had observed. He adjusted his glasses and began analyzing the code, tracing the lines with his finger on the screen. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2 minutes of absolute silence. Then he turned to the group, his face pale. "She's right." A collective murmur swept through the room. Dr. Miller stepped forward, incredulous. "What do you mean she's right?" The senior engineer pointed to the screen. "These 2 lines are indeed inverted. It's a subtle logic error, but she's correct. If we fix this, the system should come back online." Maria felt her legs go weak. She was right, but instead of relief, she felt a wave of panic as all eyes turned to her again, now with a mixture of shock and disbelief. But no one can guarantee that this alone will solve it. A development manager crossed his arms. "What if we mess with the wrong code and make everything worse? We already have a disaster on our hands. We can't risk a complete system collapse." "He's right," another engineer agreed. "Any change now is a huge risk." Silence returned, heavier than before. Everyone knew something had to be done, but no one wanted to take responsibility for the next step. Maria looked at those brilliant people, graduates of the best universities with years of experience, all paralyzed by fear. And then she heard her own voice, firm this time. "I'll do it." Everyone turned to her as if she had said she was going to fly out the window. "I'll make the correction," Maria repeated, her heart pounding but her voice no longer trembling. "If I'm right, the system comes back. If I'm wrong, the responsibility is mine." Dr. Miller studied her in silence for long seconds. She held his gaze, even though every fiber of her body screamed to retreat. Finally, he nodded slowly and gestured for the senior engineer to move away from the terminal. "What is your name?" "Maria Rodriguez, sir." "Then, Maria Rodriguez," he pointed to the empty chair. "Show us what you can do." Maria dropped the cleaning cloth onto the cart and walked to the computer. She sat down in the ergonomic chair, so different from the broken one she used at home. Her hands trembled slightly as they rested on the keyboard. 20 pairs of eyes watched her in sepulchral silence. She located the problematic lines, highlighted them, cut and pasted them in the correct order. She checked twice, 3 times. She took a deep breath and pressed enter to save the changes. Another. Command to restart the validation module. The screen went black for 3 endless seconds. Then it returned, now without error messages. Green numbers began to appear, transactions being processed, server status normalizing. The system was alive again. A timid applause started at the back of the room, then another. In seconds, everyone was clapping, some whistling, others simply staring at the screen with relief etched on their faces. Dr. Miller placed a hand on Maria's shoulder, squeezing lightly. "You just saved this company millions in losses," he said, his voice choked. "How did you learn to do that?" Maria stood, up from the chair, her legs still shaky. "I study, sir, programming at night college, and I practice whenever I can." Dr. Miller looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Not an invisible cleaner, but a person. "How long have you worked here?" 2 years, sir, night shift cleaning." He nodded slowly, processing the information. Then he turned to the engineers and managers. "Folks, you can go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll talk about what happened here and how to prevent it from happening again." People began to disperse, some still casting curious glances at Maria as they gathered their things. In 15 minutes the floor was almost empty. Only Dr. Miller and Maria remained, she still next to the cleaning cart, he with his hands in the pockets of his tailored trousers. "Maria," he broke the silence, "can you stay a few more minutes? I'd like to talk to you." She nodded, her heart starting to race again. He gestured for her to follow him into the glass-walled executive office. Maria had never been inside. The space was dominated by a polished mahogany desk, leather chairs, a bookshelf filled with books and trophies, and a panoramic view of the illuminated avenue below. Arthur Miller sat in one of the chairs and indicated another for Maria. She perched on the edge of the seat, her hands clasped in her lap. "Tell me your story," he asked, his voice gentle now, without the imperial authority of before. "How did you end up here?" Maria looked at her own hands, calloused from scrubbing and cleaning, and then at the man across from her. Arthur Miller was at least 50, with expression lines around his eyes, a gold wedding band on his ring finger. A man who probably never had to worry about how to pay the electricity bill. How could she make someone like that understand? But he waited, patient, so she began. "I grew up in East LA, sir. My mother always worked as a seamstress, making clothes for downtown shops. My father was a bus driver." She paused, the memory still hurting after so many years. "When I was 7, he left. Never came back. Never explained why. He just vanished." Arthur nodded, without interrupting. "But before he left, he taught me a lot. My dad loved fixing broken things, fans, irons, blenders, anything that didn't work. He would take apart and figure out the problem. I would stand right there, fascinated, watching him tinker with the wires and parts. He said everything had a logic, and if you understood the logic, you could fix anything." Maria smiled sadly. "I guess that's where my interest in technology came from. I wanted to understand how things worked inside." She took a breath, continuing. "When he left, my mother was alone with me and my younger brother, Daniel. She sewed day and night to make ends meet. I took over the household chores, looked after my brother, cooked. By 14, I was already working part-time at a diner to help with expenses." "And how did you discover programming?" Arthur asked, genuinely interested. "At the public high school, sir. There was a computer science teacher, Mr. Roberts, who saw something in me. He noticed I solved logic problems quickly, that I had an aptitude for reasoning. One day he showed me some lines of code, said that was programming. I was mesmerized." Maria's eyes shone as she recalled. "It was just like what my dad did with broken appliances, only with words and numbers. You created a logic. And things happened. It was magic. Mr. Roberts lent me books, gave me exercises, but I didn't have a computer at home, so I practiced by writing code by hand in old notebooks. I only tested it when I could stay at the school library after class." She laughed humorlessly. "The girls in my class called me crazy. They said I should be thinking about getting a boyfriend, not writing strange commands." Arthur shook his head, a trace of sadness in his eyes. "When I finished high school, my mother wanted me to get a steady job, something that paid better than the diner. She didn't understand why I wanted to go to college for programming. She said it was too much of a dream for people like us." Maria lowered her gaze. But I couldn't give up. There was something inside me that needed to try. So I applied to the public university night shift. I got in. And how did you end up here? Arthur gestured to the surrounding office. I needed money for transportation, materials, food. College is public, but the rest costs money. I saw the job posting for a night cleaning assistant here in the building. The hours were perfect, from 2 in the morning to 6, so I could do everything. Leave class at 11 at night, take the bus here, work, then go straight home to rest a few hours before the next day's classes. She smiled bitterly. It looked like a good plan on paper. And in practice? In practice, sir, I sleep an average of 3 hours a night. I wake up at noon, help my mother with the sewing, and my brother, study for exams, do college assignments, prepare dinner, go to class at 7. I attend class until 11, take the subway and bus here, work from 2 to 6, go back home, sleep a little, and it starts all over again. She met his eyes. There are days I don't know if I'll be able to get out of bed, but I get up because giving up is not an option. Arthur was silent for long moments, absorbing every word. Finally he asked, "And you never got an opportunity in the field, with all that knowledge?" Maria laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. "I tried, sir. I sent my resume to over 50 companies. The few that called me for an interview changed their minds when they found out I worked in cleaning. They said they didn't have a spot for an intern, or that they needed someone with experience. But how am I supposed to get experience if no one gives me the first chance?" She felt the old anger rise in her throat, but she pushed it back. Once an HR manager told me to my face that I should focus on getting a real job instead of wasting time with technology, that it wasn't for people like me, people like you. Arthur repeated, his voice carrying something Maria couldn't identify. "Yes, sir, poor, from the inner city, woman, black. Choose which one you think weighed the most." The words came out harsher than she intended. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to—" "Don't apologize," he interrupted her firmly. "Never apologize for speaking the truth." Maria blinked, surprised. Arthur stood up and walked to the window, observing the city below. Then he turned back to her. "You know what impresses me most about you, Maria? It's not just that you identified the error. It's that you had the courage to speak up, even knowing you could be ridiculed, even knowing you could lose your job for being where you shouldn't be. You took the risk because you believed you were right. That's something no college can teach." She didn't know what to say, so she remained silent. "Can I ask you a question?" Arthur sat down again. "Why don't you ever give up? What keeps you going?" Maria thought before answering. "There's a quote I read once. I don't remember where. It said that luck is when opportunity meets preparation. For a long time I thought I wasn't lucky, that I was born without it. But then I realized it wasn't about luck. It was about being prepared for when the opportunity appeared, even if it was the smallest, the most unlikely one." She looked directly at him. "Tonight, the opportunity appeared, and I was prepared." Arthur smiled, genuine this time. "Yes, you were." He drummed his fingers on the desk, thoughtful. "Maria, what happened today cannot simply go unnoticed. You saved this company from a disaster. More than that, you proved that talent can be in the most unexpected places, just waiting for a chance." Maria's heart accelerated. She didn't dare imagine what would come next. "I want you to come to my office tomorrow. No, excuse me, later today at 2 in the afternoon. We're going to have a serious conversation about your future." He stood up, indicating the meeting was over. "And Maria, you can finish your shift normally today, but starting tomorrow things are going to change." Maria left the glass office with shaky legs. She returned to the cleaning cart like an automaton, still processing the conversation. As she cleaned the now empty desks, her brain wouldn't stop spinning. What did he mean by things are going to change? Would it be a promotion? A raise? Or was he just being polite and tomorrow he would say she couldn't work there anymore for accessing confidential information? She tried to push away the negative thoughts and focused on the work. She still had 3 floors to clean before the end of her shift, but for the first time in 2 years, she cleaned those offices feeling something different. It wasn't exactly hope. It was still too tenuous to have a name. But it was something. At 6 in the morning, Maria changed out of her uniform, swiped her badge at the exit, and caught the first bus home. The sun was beginning to rise over the city, painting the sky orange and pink. She leaned her head against the bus window, exhausted, and closed her eyes. She arrived home at 7:15. Her mother was already awake, making coffee in the tiny kitchen. Mrs. Celia was 52 but looked 10 years older, her face marked by worries and sleepless nights. Her fingers were deformed from so much sewing, calluses upon calluses. "Honey, are you okay?" Mrs. Celia looked at Maria with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Maria sat. Down at the table, the words stuck in her throat. How could she explain? "Mom, something happened at work today." Mrs. Celia immediately tensed up. "Did they fire you? It was that, wasn't it? I knew you shouldn't be studying those computer things. People don't like people who think they're smarter than—" "No, Mum, they didn't fire me," Maria interrupted gently. "It was the opposite, I think." And then she told her everything. The system crisis, the error she identified, the correction she made, the conversation with Dr. Miller. Mrs. Celia listened in silence, her eyes wide, the cup of coffee cooling in her hands. When Maria finished, her mother was quiet for long seconds. Then, to her daughter's surprise, she started to cry. Not a cry of sadness, but of something Maria hadn't seen on that face in a long time. Relief, maybe even pride. "My girl," Mrs. Celia held her daughter's hands. "You were always special. Since you were little. Your father saw it, I saw it. But I was so afraid the world would break you, you know? That you would dream too much and reality would hurt you. That's why I kept telling you to take it easy, not to expect too much." "I know, Mom. But you didn't give up. Even when I doubted you, even when everyone doubted you, you didn't give up." Mrs. Celia squeezed her daughter's hands tightly. "Your father would be so proud." The mention of her father was like a punch to Maria's stomach. She rarely spoke of him, the pain of rejection still alive after 15 years. A man who simply decided he didn't want that family anymore and left without looking back. But she kept the good memories like rare treasures, the afternoons fixing appliances, the explanations about how things worked, the look of pride in his eyes when she understood something quickly. "Go get some sleep, honey." Mrs. Celia pulled Maria into a tight hug. "Then you get ready and go to that meeting. And whatever that man offers, you accept. Understand? You deserve it." Maria went up to the room she shared with her brother. Daniel was still asleep, wrapped in the thin blanket. She threw herself onto the mattress and closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Her brain was buzzing with possibilities, fears, hopes. At 9:30, she gave up on sleeping. She got up, took a long shower, and chose her best outfit. A pair of black dress pants she had bought used, a white button-down shirt, and the only pair of shoes she owned that weren't sneakers. At noon, she took the bus back to the avenue. She arrived 40 minutes early and walked around the plaza in front of the building, too nervous to go up. When it was finally 2 o'clock, she entered, swiped her badge, and went up to the 28th floor, where the president's private office was located. The secretary, a middle-aged woman in a grey suit, looked her up and down with evident disapproval before announcing her arrival. Maria was led into a room even more imposing than the one yesterday. Arthur Miller was behind a massive desk, but he wasn't alone. There were 5 other people in the room, all executives judging by their impeccable attire and confident postures. Maria felt her stomach churn. "Maria, please come in." Arthur gestured to an empty chair in front of the desk. "These are the members of the Miller Group Executive Board." She sat down, her hands sweaty, her heart pounding. Arthur remained standing and began to speak, addressing the directors. "Gentlemen, last night we experienced a crisis that could have destroyed our reputation and caused irreparable losses. As you all know, our main system was down for over 6 hours. The entire technical team failed to identify the problem." He paused dramatically. "The person who saved the company was her, Maria Rodriguez, night cleaning staff, programming student." The directors' faces displayed a range of reactions: surprise, skepticism. One of them, A bald man in a red tie visibly frowned. Maria felt every gaze on her like a physical weight. Arthur continued, now detailing what had happened. How she identified the error that dozens of engineers missed. How she had the courage to speak up, even though she was just the cleaner. How she took responsibility for making the correction when all the experts were paralyzed by fear. This raises a very important question. Arthur walked around the table, his hands clasped behind his back. How many talents like Maria are invisible to us? How many people with extraordinary potential are in roles that don't utilize their capabilities because they never had a chance? A director with grey hair and gold-rimmed glasses leaned forward. It's an inspiring story, Arthur. But what exactly is your proposal? Arthur returned to his position behind the desk and looked directly at Maria before answering. I want to offer Maria a full scholarship for a specialization in systems development in partnership with the best technical education institution in the city. Furthermore, I want to create a paid internship position in the technology department where she can apply her knowledge under the supervision of our senior team. Maria held her breath. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Wait a minute. The man in the red tie raised his hand. Are we talking about taking someone with no professional experience and putting them directly into development? Wouldn't that be premature? Premature would be ignoring what happened yesterday, Arthur countered firmly. She solved in minutes what our team couldn't in hours. She demonstrated not only technical knowledge, but logical reasoning, courage, and initiative. These are exactly the qualities we look for in our employees. Another director, younger, in a navy blue suit, nodded in agreement. I have to admit it's a unique situation, and it could send a good message about our company valuing talent, regardless of background. It's not about a message, Arthur cut in. It's, about doing what is right and smart. Maria has a gift. It would be a criminal waste not to cultivate it. The director with the gold-rimmed glasses turned to Maria. Young woman, do you understand that this would be an enormous responsibility? You would have to maintain your academic performance, quickly learn our work methodologies, and prove that you can contribute to the team. Maria found her voice, trying to keep it steady. Yes, ma'am. I understand. And I am prepared to work as hard as necessary. You already work late nights and study in the evenings. The director in the blue suit observed. How will you fit an internship and a specialization course into that routine? The internship would replace the cleaning job, Arthur explained, and the specialization course would be on Saturdays full-time. Maria would have to give up her weekend, but she would gain knowledge equivalent to 2 years of experience, concentrated in 6 months. Maria did quick calculations in her head. It meant waking up early on Saturdays, studying all day, returning home at night, helping her mother on Sunday, studying for her regular college exams in the gaps. It would be exhausting. It would be brutally difficult. I accept. The words came out before she could think twice. All eyes turned to her again. Arthur smiled, satisfied. Are you sure? Don't you want to think about it? I don't need to think, sir. Maria stood up, not knowing exactly where that confidence came from. I've spent 2 years waiting for an opportunity like this. I won't waste it for fear of hard work. I know how to work hard. It's all I do. The room was silent for a few seconds. Then the director with the gold-rimmed glasses began to clap slowly. The others joined. Taikunin, even the skeptic in the red tie, nodded in approval. Then it's decided. Arthur extended his hand to Maria. She shook it, feeling the firmness of his grip, the symbolic weight of that moment. Welcome to the technology team at Miller Investment Group, Maria. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. They talked about paperwork, the internship contract, details of the course. Maria signed where they told her to, nodded when they asked if she agreed, but her brain barely processed everything. It was real, it was actually happening. When the meeting ended, Arthur walked her to the door. Maria, you start next Monday. That gives you the weekend to prepare, resolve any pending issues. The Human Resources Department will contact you tomorrow with all the details. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. She couldn't stop thanking him. Don't thank me, you earned it. He paused. But can I give you a piece of advice? It won't be easy. Some people will doubt you. Others will think you don't deserve to be there. You'll have to prove your worth every day. Work harder than everyone else, be better than everyone else. Are you prepared for that? Maria thought of the late nights cleaning bathrooms, the classes she attended with her eyes burning from sleep deprivation, the rejections she had received, the pain of being invisible. I was born prepared for it, sir. Arthur smiled. I believe you were. Maria left the building in a state of shock. Her legs felt like they weren't touching the ground. She walked aimlessly down the avenue, needing to process everything before going home and telling her mother. The store windows reflected her image, a young woman with dark skin, curly hair pulled back, simple but clean clothes. She still looked like the same person. But everything had changed. She took out her cell phone and called the only person who might understand. Julia, her best friend since high school, answered on the third ring. Mari, what a miracle you never call this early. Ju, you won't believe what happened. And Maria told her everything, the words tumbling out, laughing and almost crying at the same time. Julia screamed so loud that Maria had to pull the phone away from her ear. I knew it. I always knew you'd make it. When are we celebrating? Celebrating, Maria laughed. Ju, I barely have. Time to sleep. Nonsense, Saturday night, you, me and a pizza, no excuses. Julia wouldn't take no for an answer. Maria knew that. And deep down, she wanted to celebrate. She deserved to celebrate. Okay, Saturday. Maria agreed. But it has to be cheap. I'm broke. You're impossible, Julia laughed. You just got a new job and you're already worried about money. Old habits. Maria said goodbye and put her phone away. She looked up at the sky, a strip of blue between the towering buildings. Wherever her father was, if he still thought of her, she wanted him to. No, she had done it. Despite everything, she had done it. The weekend flew by. Maria had to talk to her cleaning supervisor to let him know she was leaving. The man, a 60-year-old who had always been kind to her, was genuinely happy about the news. I knew you wouldn't stay here forever, kid. You were always different from the others. Monday arrived too fast and too slow at the same time. Maria woke up at 5 in the morning, unable to sleep any longer. She chose her outfit carefully. Black dress pants, a white shirt, the blazer her mother had specially sewn for her on Sunday. Hair pulled back in a professional bun. Black flats that Julia had lent her because her old shoes were too worn out. She arrived at the building at 7:30, an hour earlier than agreed. The new receptionist didn't know her, so Maria had to explain that she was no longer with cleaning, that she was now an intern. The woman checked a list and finally let her go up. On the 23rd floor, everything looked different in the daylight. The technology department was organized into work islands, each with 4 stations. Dual, monitors, mechanical keyboards, expensive ergonomic chairs. Some people were already working, focused on their screens. You must be Maria. A voice behind her made her turn around. It was a man in his mid-30s, short brown hair, thick-rimmed glasses, a friendly smile. I'm Phil, the development team supervisor. Welcome. Maria shook his hand, relieved by the warm reception. Thank you. I'm a little nervous. That's normal. First day is always like that. Phil gestured for her to follow him. I'll show you your workstation and introduce you to the team. But first, I need to give you a heads up. Not everyone here was happy about your hiring. Some people think you skipped steps. Others have prejudices they prefer not to admit. Don't take it personally, okay? Just do your job well and let the rest sort itself out. Maria nodded, appreciating the honesty. She knew it wouldn't be easy. She was prepared for side-eye, whispered comments, distrust, but she wasn't prepared for how much it would hurt. Her station was on an island with 3 other developers. Phil made the introductions. Brandon, a young guy in a hoodie with headphones permanently around his neck, barely looked at her before returning to his code. Camilla, a woman in her 40s, was polite but cold, and Robert, a black man with a well-kept beard and an intelligent gaze, was the only one who genuinely smiled. Welcome to the team. Robert extended his hand. I heard about what you did. It was impressive. Thank you. Maria sat in the chair that would be hers, turned on the computer, and stared at the 2 empty screens. It was all hers now. that space, that opportunity. Phil returned with a stack of papers. I'm going to give you some basic tasks to start with, nothing too complex, just so you can familiarize yourself with our system and methodology. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. The first few hours were silent torture. Maria tried to focus on the code, but she felt the occasional glances from others. She heard whispers that stopped when she looked up. At lunchtime, she went to the cafeteria alone, got her packed lunch, and sat at an empty table. No one came to join her. This continued for the following days. Maria worked in silence, delivered the tasks Phil assigned always meticulously. She arrived 15 minutes earlier and left 15 minutes later than everyone else. She studied during her lunch break. She took work home and stayed up late reviewing code. On Wednesday, she finally heard the first direct comment. She was in the break room getting coffee when 2 developers walked in, not realizing she was there. It's ridiculous. We bust our butts for years to be here, and she just gets lucky once and gets everything handed to her. I know, right? Poor little cleaner. I bet she quits or gets fired in 3 months. Maria felt the coffee go down bitter in her throat. She could have revealed herself, confronted the 2, but she didn't. She simply left the break room in silence, returned to her station, and worked with even more determination. That night, back home, she broke down. Mrs. Celia found her crying in her room, the laptop open on her lap. Honey, what is it? It's so hard, Mom. The words came out between sobs. Everyone looks at me like I shouldn't be there, like I'm a fraud. And maybe they're right. Maybe I just got lucky. Mrs. Celia sat on the bed next to her daughter and held her face between her calloused hands. Listen to me, Maria Rodriguez. You didn't get lucky. You were prepared. You studied when you didn't even have a computer. You worked when you should have been sleeping. You never gave up when anyone else would have. That's not luck. That's struggle. That's merit. But they don't see it that way. Then you'll have to show them. Not with words, but with work. Mrs. Celia wiped the tears from her daughter's face. Do you think it was easy for me when I started sewing? The other seamstresses said I didn't know anything, that my stitches were crooked. You know what I did? I practiced until my hands bled, and in the end I was better than all of them. Maria hugged her mother, feeling the strength of that small but unwavering woman. Thank you, Mum. On Friday, Philip called Maya in for a quick meeting. She walked into his office with a knot in her stomach, fearing the worst, but he smiled and slid a folder across the desk to her. Your first assignments, I reviewed everything. He opened the folder, showing pages marked with notes. Maya, your code is clean, efficient, and well documented. You did in 3 days what I expected to take a week, and without any significant errors. She blinked, processing the information. Seriously? Seriously. Philip leaned back in his chair. Look, I know it hasn't been easy for you here. People talk. I hear it. But ignore them. Keep doing what you're doing. Your work will speak for itself. Maya left that meeting feeling a little lighter. Maybe there was hope. Maybe she really could prove her worth. The first month passed in a brutal routine. Intense work during the week, a specialization course on Saturdays from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening, and regular college classes Monday through Friday nights. Maya slept an average of 4 hours a night. She ran on coffee and sheer willpower. But slowly, something began to change. Ethan was the first to break the invisible barrier separating Maya from the rest of the team. One Tuesday, he simply sat down next to her during lunch with his packed meal and started talking about code as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I saw that optimization you did on the query module. Using asynchronous caching there was really smart. I hadn't thought of that. He chewed a piece of chicken as he spoke. It decreased the response time by almost 40%. Maya looked at him, surprised and grateful. Thanks. I was studying performance and thought I could apply it. Where did you learn that? In college? No, YouTube, forums, documentation. I read a lot of technical documentation. She gave an awkward laugh. My friends think I'm crazy. Ethan smiled. Mine too. But look, just between us, I think you're doing incredible work. Don't worry about what the others say, they'll figure it out soon enough. That simple conversation meant more to Maya than Ethan could ever know. He became a kind of silent ally, always ready to answer technical questions or offer a word of encouragement when she looked especially tired. The real turning point began in the second month. Philip called the team together for a meeting about a persistent problem in the financial reporting system. The process was slow, crashed frequently, and generated constant user complaints. We need someone to lead a task force and solve this once and for all. Philip looked around the table. It's a complex project. It will require deep refactoring of legacy code. There was silence. No one wanted to take on that hot potato. Messing with old, poorly documented code was like walking through a minefield. One mistake could break the entire system. Maya timidly raised her hand. I can do it. All eyes turned to her. Brandon, who had barely spoken to her in 2 months, let out a short laugh. You've barely been here 2 months. This system is over 5 years old. It's pretty complex. I know. Maya kept her voice steady. That's exactly why I want to try. I studied legacy systems in my specialization course, and I believe I can handle it. Philip watched her for long seconds, then he nodded. All right, it's yours, but you'll need to document everything you do, okay? And if there's no progress in 2 weeks, we'll have to rethink. Maya spent the next 2 weeks immersed in that code. She arrived at 7 in the morning and left at 7 at night. She took notes home. She drew flowcharts on paper to understand the messy logic someone had created years ago. She discovered patchworks on top of patchworks, redundant code and functions that made no sense. But gradually she began to understand the pattern, like an impossible puzzle finally revealing its image. She started refactoring line by line, replacing inefficient processes with elegant solutions. She created detailed documentation for everything she changed. She tested every alteration exhaustively. On the 10th day, she called Philip to show him the results. She ran the reporting system on the test machine. What used to take 3 minutes to generate a simple report now took 15 seconds. And it worked perfectly, without errors, without crashes. Philip was speechless. How did you do that? Maya explained each change, showing the before and after, pointing out where the bottleneck was. Philip shook his head, impressed. This is senior developer work, Maya, not a 2-month intern. I just applied what I learned. She tried to sound modest, but inside, she was bursting with pride. I'm calling the rest of the team. They need to see this. The demonstration was a turning point. Even Brandon had to admit the work was flawless. Chloe asked difficult technical questions, trying to find flaws, but Maya answered them all confidently. Ethan smiled proudly, as if he had something to do with her success. After the meeting, people who had never spoken to Maya started greeting her in the hallways. Some even asked for her opinion on technical problems. The barrier was beginning to fall, brick by brick. But not everyone was happy. Maya started noticing resentful looks from some older colleagues, passive-aggressive comments about how she was being favored, whispers she pretended not to hear. One of them was Gus, a 30-year-old mid-level developer who had been with the company for 5 years. He was never openly hostile, but he made his displeasure clear with small actions. He questioned every technical decision Maya made in meetings. He made jokes about her being the boss's pet. Once, he suggested in front of everyone that maybe she was getting outside help to do such good work. Ethan confronted Gus directly. Dude, what's your problem with her? Maya is crushing it. You should be learning from her, not trying to tear her down. I don't have a problem. Gus crossed his arms. I just think it's weird for someone with no experience to do everything so fast. It's suspicious. Suspicious is your jealousy. Ethan didn't let it go. The tension in the department was palpable. Philip tried to mediate, but he knew some. People simply wouldn't accept Maya regardless of what she did. The issue wasn't competence. It was ingrained prejudice that they themselves might not recognize. Maya tried to ignore it and focus on her work. But it was exhausting. Every day was a silent battle to prove she deserved to be there. She wondered how long she could sustain that pace before breaking. The answer came unexpectedly. 3.5 months after starting in the technology department, On a Thursday at 6 in the evening, when most employees had already left, the payment system began to show critical errors. It wasn't as severe as the initial crisis, but it was serious enough. Transfers were not being processed correctly. Values were being duplicated in some accounts. Philip called an emergency meeting. 6 developers, including Maya, gathered in the conference room. The screens showed cascading error logs. "Did anyone make any recent changes to the payment module?" Philip asked, his voice tight. Gus reluctantly raised his hand. "I deployed a fix last night, but I tested everything before. It was working perfectly." "Obviously it wasn't," Chloe retorted, impatient. "We need to revert now before this turns into a disaster." "Wait." Maya was looking closely at the logs on the screen. Something didn't add up. "The errors started today at 2 in the afternoon, right? But Gus's deploy was last night. If it were a problem with his code, the errors would have started immediately." Everyone paused to think. She was right. "So what caused it?" Brandon asked. Maya continued scanning the logs, her brain processing patterns. Then she asked to see the transaction history of the database. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, opening windows, cross-referencing data, tracing connections. "Here," she pointed to the screen. At 2 o'clock, there was an automatic update on the database server. It changed the version of a component our system uses to validate transactions. The new version has a known bug that conflicts with our implementation. Philip leaned closer, checking. "My God, you're right. How did you know that?" "I read about that bug in a technical forum last week. I remembered it when I saw the symptoms." Maya was already typing commands. "I can temporarily revert the component to the previous version while we find a definitive solution." "Do it," Philip authorized. In 15 minutes, Maya had reverted the problematic update, and the system returned to normal operation. The room fell silent, everyone processing what had just happened. Gus was the first to speak, and to everyone's surprise, there was no resentment in his voice, just exhaustion. "You're really good at this. I wouldn't have been able to identify that problem in 1,000 years." Maya looked at him, surprised by the admission. "Thanks. But it was luck too. If I hadn't read about that bug just this week—" "It wasn't luck," Ethan interrupted. "It was preparation. How many people here read technical forums in their free time? How many study beyond work?" No one answered. The truth was uncomfortable. Maya worked harder, studied more, and dedicated herself more than most of them, and she was starting to reap the rewards of that dedication. Philip put a hand on her shoulder. "Maya, you saved the company again. It's becoming a habit." She laughed, nervous. "I hope not. I prefer the systems to work properly." When everyone left, Maya stayed a few more minutes alone in the room, looking at the now calm and functional screens. She thought about how her life had changed in just a few months, from invisible to indispensable, from scorned to respected. But the victory tasted bittersweet, because she knew that every achievement came with a cost: the sleepless nights, the constant exhaustion, the pressure to always be perfect because one failure would be amplified. The burden of representing not just herself, but all the people who came from where she came from and dreamed of a chance. She picked up her bag and left the building. Paulista Avenue was busy as always, a river of people heading home after another day of work. Maya joined the current, just another person in the crowd, but it wasn't true. She was no longer invisible, not to herself, and increasingly less so to others. On the crowded bus ride home, she closed her eyes and allowed herself to feel proud. Not the arrogant pride that diminishes others, but the quiet pride of someone who knows they are doing their best and that it is making a difference. When she arrived home, Daniel, her 17-year-old brother, was doing math homework at the kitchen table. He looked up at her with evident admiration. Since Maya got the internship, Daniel saw her through different eyes. She had become his role model. "Hey, sis, how was your day?" "Interesting." Maya let her bag drop to the floor and collapsed into the chair next to him. "I had to solve another system problem." "You're like a tech superhero," Daniel joked, but there was truth in his words. Maya laughed. Not really. I just do my job. But it's more than that. Daniel grew serious. You showed us that we can make it, that it doesn't matter where we come from. That's important, Mari. For me, for my friends. You proved it's possible. Her brother's words hit Maya hard. She had been so focused on proving her worth to others that she hadn't stopped to think about the broader impact of her journey. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was opening doors, showing paths, being the representation she never had. Dan. She held her brother's hand. You'll make it too. Anything you want to do, you can do it. Never doubt that. I know. He smiled. After all, I have the best teacher in the world. That night, as she lay in bed, exhausted but satisfied, Maya thought about all the distance she had covered, and all the distance she still had to go. She was just getting started. But something was changing not only in her career but in the company's culture itself, and that would become even clearer in the following months, when Augustus Mendez would make a decision that would change everything. The next Monday brought an unexpected development. Upon arriving at work, Maya found an email from the CEO's secretary. Dr. Augustus wanted to see her. It wasn't a casual meeting. It was a formal summons, scheduled for 10 in the morning. Maya spent the next 2 hours in a state of growing nervousness. What did he want? Had she done something wrong? Or maybe it was something good. There was no way to know. At 10 sharp, she went up to the 28th floor. The secretary led her directly to the CEO's office. Augustus was standing by the window, looking out at the city below. He turned when she entered. Maya, please have a seat. He gestured toward an armchair. I want to talk about your future here at the company. Her heart pounded. Future. The word hung in the air, loaded with possibilities. You've been here for almost 4 months. Philip sends me weekly reports on your performance. Augustus sat down behind his desk. And frankly, you've exceeded all expectations, not just mine, but everyone's. Maya didn't know what to say, so she just listened. I'm planning something, Augustus continued, something that could change the way this company operates. And you are central to this plan, but before I explain, I need to know. Are you happy here? The question caught her off guard. Happy. She thought about the challenges, the exhaustion, the pressure, the occasional loneliness. But she also thought about the achievements, the learning, the feeling of finally doing what she was born to do. I am, she answered honestly. It's hard, but I never expected it to be easy. And yes, I am happy, fulfilled. Augustus smiled, satisfied. Excellent, because it's about to get even harder, but also much more interesting. Augustus opened a folder on the table and pushed it toward Maya. She opened it and found documents with the company logo, graphs, spreadsheets, and a highlighted title, Invisible Talent Program. What is this? She asked, flipping through the pages. It's an initiative I've been developing for a few weeks. Augustus stood up and began pacing the office, his hands clasped behind his back. Your story made me think. If there was you working in cleaning with so much wasted talent, how many others are out there? In companies like ours, in operational roles, brilliant people who never had a real opportunity. Maya felt a shiver run down her spine. I want to create a program that identifies and develops talent among our employees from all areas, not just technology, administration, finance, marketing. I want to offer scholarships, training, career transition opportunities. I want Mendez Group to be known not only for the services it offers, but for how it values and develops its most precious human capital. That's incredible, Maya murmured, moved. And I want you as the symbol of this program. Augustus sat back down. I want to tell your story, not to exploit you, but to inspire others, to show that talent can be anywhere, and that this company is willing to look for it and cultivate it. Maya processed the information, her story being told publicly, people knowing where she came from, what she overcame. It was scary and empowering at the same time. But this means exposure, Augustus continued, watching her intently. There will be newspaper articles, maybe interviews. Your life will cease. To be private to a certain extent. That's why I'm asking, are you willing? Maya thought about her mother, who still sewed, despite Maya now being able to help more at home with her new salary. She thought about Daniel, who now studied with more determination because he had an example. She thought about the other girls from Itakura, who might think they had no future. And she thought about her father, wherever he was, who always said she was special. "I am," she replied firmly. "If my story can help someone believe it's possible, then yes, I am willing." Augustus smiled, clearly satisfied. "Great, because I've already scheduled a general meeting with all employees 2 months from now, an event in the main auditorium. I want to announce the program and publicly honor you. We're going to make it memorable." The next 2 months were a roller coaster. Maya continued to work hard, but now with a different awareness. She wasn't just a developer, she was a symbol, and that came with added weight. The specialization course was nearing its end. Maya had the best grades in the class, to the surprise of absolutely no one who knew her. Her dedication was legendary among her colleagues. She was the first to arrive and the last to leave. She asked complex questions. She helped those who struggled. In regular college, she was in her 4th semester and maintained a merit scholarship for academic performance. Professors adored her. Classmates respected her. She had become a minor celebrity on campus. At work, things had improved considerably. Even Gus had overcome his initial resentment and now worked well with her. Chloe, who was once cold, had become an unofficial mentor, giving advice on career and corporate navigation. Brandon was still quiet, but respectful. And Ethan continued to be her rock, her genuine friend in an environment that was sometimes hostile. But the real test would come unexpectedly, 3 weeks before the planned event. It was a Friday, 10 o'clock at night. Maya was in the office finishing a project when the entire system began to exhibit erratic behavior. Not just slow or with occasional errors, the system seemed to be under attack. Impossible login attempts coming from various IPs, suspicious transactions being blocked, security alerts cascading. Maya immediately called Philip. "I think we're under a cyber attack." In 40 minutes, the entire security team was in the office. Philip, Ethan, Chloe, Brandon, Gus, and 6 more specialists from other areas. Augustus also showed up, his face tight with worry. "It's a coordinated attack." The head of security, a gray-haired man named Robert, confirmed after an initial analysis. "They're trying brute force on high-value accounts. If they gain access, they could transfer millions before we detect it." "Have we blocked the external IPs?" Philip asked. "Yes, but they're constantly changing. It's a sophisticated botnet." Robert pointed to the logs. "And there's more. They seem to be exploiting a vulnerability we didn't know about." Maya was observing the screens, her brain processing patterns. There was something familiar about that attack. The methodology, the sequence. She had read about something similar. "Can I take a look?" she asked Robert. He looked at her with visible skepticism. "Ma'am, no offense, but this is pretty complex. Cybersecurity is not regular development." "I know." Maya wasn't offended. "But I studied distributed brute force attacks in my course. There's a specific technique that... Can I just see the network logs for a minute?" Robert looked at Philip, who nodded his authorization. Reluctantly, he ceded space to Maya. She began to analyze the traffic patterns. The IPs changed, but there was a constant, a specific timing between attempts, a digital signature she recognized. "This isn't a traditional attack," she murmured, more to herself than to the others. "It's an APT attack, advanced persistent threat. They've been inside the system for days, maybe weeks, and only now activated the final phase." Robert leaned closer, interested despite himself. "How do you know that?" "The traffic pattern. They're not really trying brute force, that's a distraction. The real attack is happening in the background, in small data packets that look like normal traffic." Maya pointed to a series of almost imperceptible transfers. "See, they're exfiltrating data, and they've probably already planted a backdoor in the system." The silence in the room was absolute. Robert checked where she was pointing, his expression changing from skepticism to shock. "My God, she's right. How did I not see that?" "Because they were very good at hiding it." Maya was already typing commands, tracing the origin. But they made one mistake. They used a specific encryption protocol that has a known flaw. If we exploit that flaw, we can trace back where they are sending the data and close the back door. You know how to do that? Augustus asked, tense. Maya took a deep breath. I learned it in theory. I've never done it in practice. But yes, I think I can. Then do it. Robert didn't hesitate this time. You're in charge. What followed were 4 intense hours, Maya coordinating the team, giving precise instructions, tracing the attack through layers of obfuscation. Ethan supported her, executing the commands she dictated. Philip managed communication with the board. Chloe documented every step. At 2:30 in the morning, Maya finally found the back door. It was elegant and well hidden, inserted into a third-party library that no one would think to check. She isolated it, closed it, and then began the reverse tracking process. I got it, she announced at 3:15. I blocked the data exfiltration and closed all entry points. The system is clean. The room erupted in applause. Robert shook her hand firmly. Maya, you are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You saved the company from a disaster that could have cost millions and destroyed our reputation. Augustus approached, his eyes shining with pride. Second time you've saved us. It really is becoming a habit. Maya laughed, exhausted and relieved. I sincerely hope not. My heart can't take it. But even in her exhaustion, she felt a deep satisfaction, not just for solving the problem, but for the way the team worked with her. Not as an intern they had to tolerate, but as an equal, as a leader. When everyone left, only she, Ethan, and Philip remained. You were incredible today, Mari, Ethan said, using the nickname few were allowed to use. Seriously, senior expert level. You should be proud. I am, she admitted, but also scared. What if I had been wrong? What if I had made everything worse? Philip shook his head. But you weren't wrong. And you know why? Because you prepared. You studied things that weren't mandatory. You learned beyond what was necessary. When the situation demanded it, you were ready. He paused. Maya, I'm going to recommend your promotion. From intern to junior developer, you deserve it. Maya felt tears threatening to fall. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. You earned this yourself. In the following weeks, the story of the cyber attack spread throughout the company. Maya was called to meetings with the security board. They gave her a substantial bonus. And most importantly, her promotion was approved. She was no longer an intern, she was a junior developer at Mendez Group Investments, with a decent salary, full benefits, and the unconditional respect of her peers. When she told her mother, Mrs. Celia cried with joy. When she told Daniel, he hugged her tightly and whispered that he wanted to be like her when he grew up. When she told Julia, her friend screamed so loud the neighbors must have heard. But the moment that stood out the most was when she received an unexpected email. It was from a 17-year-old girl from a peripheral neighborhood in São Paulo. She had read about Maya in a technology blog that briefly mentioned the incident. Hi Maya, my name is Aline. I work as a bagger at a supermarket and study programming at night at a technical school. Everyone says I'm wasting my time, that poor girls have no future in technology. But then I read about you, and now I know it's possible. Thank you for existing and for showing the way. You are my inspiration. Maya read that email 3 times, tears streaming freely. She replied immediately, offering help, study tips, words of encouragement. And she realized Augustus was right. Her story mattered, not for her, but for all the A-lines in the world who needed to see that it was possible. The day of the big event arrived, a Saturday morning, the last of the month. The main auditorium of Mendez Group had a capacity for 500 people and was completely packed. Employees from all areas, from security to executive management, were present. Maya was backstage, more nervous than ever. She wore a navy blue dress her mother had specially sewn, her hair loose in natural curls, light makeup. She looked like a different person. Or maybe she was the same person, just allowing the world to see her completely. Philip and Ethan were there for moral support. You're going to crush it, Ethan assured her. Just be yourself. That's what scares me, Maya joked, but she was genuinely nervous. The presentation began. Augustus Mendez took the stage to applause. He spoke about the company, the challenges of the sector, the recent achievements. And then he changed the subject. I want to tell you a story that changed my perspective on talent, merit, and opportunity. A story that happened right here in this company a few months ago. The auditorium fell into absolute silence. Augustus began to narrate the night crisis, the collapsed system, the entire team unable to find the solution. And then, a young woman who worked in cleaning noticed something no one else saw. As the story unfolded, Maya heard murmurs from the audience. Some people vaguely knew about the incident, but most were hearing it for the first time. Augustus spared no details. He talked about how she was initially ridiculed, how she had the courage to take responsibility, how she saved the company. And that young woman is here today, not as a cleaner, but as a junior developer, one of the most talented professionals in this company. Ladies and gentlemen, Maya Ferreira. The auditorium erupted in applause as Maya walked onto the stage. It was a standing ovation, enthusiastic and genuine. She saw familiar faces, Mrs. Celia in the front row, crying with pride, Daniel next to her, smiling broadly, Julia waving her hands, and scattered throughout the audience, co-workers, college professors, even former cleaning colleagues. Augustus hugged her and then handed her an engraved glass plaque. For reminding, everyone, that talent doesn't wear a uniform. Maya held the plaque with trembling hands and turned to the microphone. She had prepared a speech, but now the words seemed inadequate. So she decided to simply speak from the heart. When I was 7, my father left. He never explained why, he just disappeared. She began, her voice choked. But before he left, he taught me something important. He taught me that everything has a logic, and if you understand the logic, you can fix anything. I spent my life trying to understand the logic of things, why some people have opportunities and others don't. Why the place you're born determines so much of your future. Why talent alone isn't enough. She looked at Augustus. And then I found someone who believed that talent should be enough, who gave me a chance when everyone else said I didn't deserve it, who saw beyond the uniform, beyond the background, beyond the prejudices. Maya turned to the audience. I'm not special. I'm just someone who was lucky enough to be prepared when the opportunity arose. But how many of you know someone with talent who never had that opportunity? A colleague, a family member, a friend. How much potential is wasted because no one believed, no one gave them a chance. The silence was profound. Maya continued, feeling the emotion take over. My mother is a seamstress. My brother goes to public school. I grew up in Itaquera, in a 2-bedroom apartment where the electricity bill was sometimes late. I cleaned bathrooms, emptied trash cans, mopped floors for 2 years while studying late at night. Do you think that makes me less capable, less intelligent, less deserving of being here? She paused, letting the question echo. Because a lot of people thought so. And if it were up to them, I would still be cleaning this auditorium instead of speaking here. Some people lowered their gaze, uncomfortable, but Maya wasn't accusing. She was educating. But I'm not saying this to blame anyone. I'm saying it because it needs to be said. Because somewhere out there is a young woman just like I was, working late at night, dreaming of a chance, but thinking it's impossible. And she needs to know that it's not. There's a talented boy fixing computers in the suburbs, but he won't even try to get into a company like this because he thinks it's not for people like him. And he needs to know that yes, it is for him too. The emotion in her voice increased, but Maya didn't hold back. Talent has no color. It has no social class. It has no zip code. Talent only needs one thing to flourish: opportunity. And if this company can provide that opportunity, if it can seek out talent where no one else is looking, then it's not just doing the right thing, it's being smart. Because the next great professional in this company might be cleaning the 10th floor bathroom, while studying code on an old cell phone during their break. The applause started slowly but grew until it was deafening. People stood up, clapping with tears in their eyes. Maya saw her mother sobbing, being hugged by Daniel. She saw proud professors. She saw emotional colleagues. And she saw something else. She saw change. in the expressions, in the looks, in the energy of the room. When the applause finally subsided, Augustus returned to the microphone. The Invisible Talent Program starts next Monday. We will map all employees from all areas, identify potential, offer training, scholarships, and growth opportunities. And Maya will help lead this program. She looked at him, surprised. This wasn't in the script they had discussed. Augustus smiled. You didn't think you were just going to give your testimony and go back to your computer, did you? You will be the program's ambassador, a mentor to other employees, and you will continue your development work, of course, but now with an additional mission, to help others have the same chance you had. Maya could barely process it. It was more than she had dreamed of. It was more than she thought possible. The presentation continued with details of the program, but Maya barely heard. Her mind was already racing, thinking about who she could help, how to structure mentorships, what resources they would need. She had found her purpose. After the event, there was a cocktail reception. Dozens of people approached Maya to congratulate her, ask questions, and tell their own stories of overcoming challenges. An older woman from accounting, who had worked at the company for 20 years, confessed tearfully that she had always wanted to study administration, but never had the courage. Maya took her contact information and promised to help her. A young man from the maintenance sector said he studied engineering at night and felt out of place. Maya encouraged him and connected him with people in the technical area. An administrative assistant revealed she had a talent for graphic design, but thought it was too late to change careers. Maya assured her it was never too late, and there were so many stories, so many hidden dreams, so much hidden talent. When she finally found a moment of peace, Maya found a quiet corner and took a deep breath. Philip approached with 2 glasses of juice. Tired? Exhausted, but happy. She accepted the glass. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it. You changed this company, Maya, not just by saving systems or solving crises. You changed the way people think about talent and opportunity. Philip toasted her. And that's much bigger than any code you'll ever write. In the following weeks, the Invisible Talent Program took shape. Maya interviewed over 50 interested employees. Some wanted to change areas completely. Others just wanted to deepen their knowledge in what they already did. They all had something in common, dreams that had been postponed for too long. The program offered scholarships in various fields, partnerships with educational institutions, structured mentorships, and, most importantly, internal selection processes that valued potential as much as experience. 6 months after the event, 3 cleaning employees had started technical courses paid for by the company. 2 security guards were in training for information technology. A receptionist discovered a talent for data analysis and was transitioning to the finance sector. And these were just the first cases. Maya's story began to spread beyond the company. A local newspaper did an article, then a national business magazine. She was invited to give lectures at universities. She appeared on podcasts about technology and inclusion, but she never let it go to her head. She continued to work hard, study, and develop herself. She finished college with the best grades in her class and was promoted to mid-level developer just a year and a half after starting as an intern. At work, she led complex projects. Her team respected her not only for her technical competence, but for her humanity. She never forgot where she came from. She always treated everyone with dignity, from the intern to the director. And she maintained a firm connection with her roots. She still visited the neighborhood where she grew up, now as a volunteer in a project that taught programming to young people from the periphery. She still had lunch with her former cleaning colleagues when she could. She still helped her mother with sewing on Saturday nights. 2 years after that fateful dawn when everything changed, Maya was in the office reviewing code when her cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello? Silence on the other end. Then a voice she hadn't heard in 15 years, a voice she still recognized, stored in some forgotten corner of her memory. Mari, is that you? The world stopped. Dad? The conversation was short, tense, full of unspoken words and old wounds. He had seen an article about her online. He was living upstate, working as a mechanic. He had remarried, had other children, and he carried the guilt of having abandoned his first family all those years. Maya didn't know what to feel. Anger, relief, sadness. In the end, she felt only a strange peace. She had built her life despite his absence. She had become someone he would never have imagined. "I just wanted to say I'm proud." His voice cracked. "You've become someone incredible, better than I ever was." "Thank you." That was all Maya could say. She wasn't ready for forgiveness. Maybe she never would be. But she no longer carried the sharp pain of rejection either. She had filled that void with other things: her mother's love, the pride of her own achievements, a sense of purpose. When she hung up, she felt a strange sensation, as if a cycle had closed. She didn't need his validation, she never did. But it was good to know that he knew, that he saw what she had become. A few weeks later, Maya was in the cafeteria having lunch with Ethan when a shy young woman approached. She wore a cleaning uniform and held an old notebook. "Excuse me, are you Maya Ferreira?" the girl asked, nervous. "Yes, I am. What's your name?" "Beatrice. I work the afternoon cleaning shift. I study programming too, at night. And I wanted... Could you maybe take a look at my code? I'm trying to do a project, but it's giving me an error and I don't know where." Maya smiled, and in that smile was everything she had lived, learned, and overcome. "Of course, Bea, sit down here. Let's take a look together." As she helped the young woman debug the code, Maya saw her own reflection from 2 years ago. The same hunger to learn, the same determination, the same dream shining in tired eyes. And she realized that this was her greatest legacy, not the systems she had built or the attacks she had repelled, but the doors she had opened, the paths she had illuminated, the people she had inspired to believe that they could too. Months passed. Beatrice applied to the Invisible Talent Program and was accepted. She started a technical course. Maya became her official mentor. And the story began to repeat itself, but differently now, because there was a system to support her. There were people who believed. There was a culture that valued potential. One Saturday morning, almost 3 years after saving the company for the first time, Maya was at the social project teaching programming to teenagers from the periphery. A 14-year-old girl raised her hand. "Maya, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "How did you know you were going to make it? When everything was stacked against you and people didn't believe in you, how did you keep going?" Maria paused, considering the answer. "You know, there's a quote I live by. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. I didn't know I would make it, but I prepared, I studied, I practiced, I gave it my absolute best every single day, and when the opportunity finally showed up, I was ready for it." But what if the opportunity had never come? It was a valid question. Maria thought carefully before responding. "Then I would have just kept preparing, because the knowledge, the growth, that's already a win. Regardless of where you work or what your title is, no one can take away what you've learned. That's yours forever." The girl nodded, satisfied, and Maria saw the same fire in those eyes that had once burned in her. A fire that couldn't be extinguished by tough circumstances or other people's prejudices, the fire of sheer determination. When the class ended and she was packing up her things, her cell phone rang. It was Alex. "Maria, can you swing by the office Monday morning? I have a proposition for you." She smiled. With Alex, propositions always meant new challenges, new opportunities. "Absolutely, I'll be there." "Great. We're looking at expanding the Invisible Talent Program to other companies in the group, and we need someone to spearhead that, someone who deeply understands what it means to lack opportunity and how to transform that." Maria felt her heart race. This would be a new journey, bigger, more challenging, more meaningful. "We'll talk Monday." That was all she said, but inside she was already planning, imagining, dreaming. That night, lying in the bed of the room that was now all hers, David had managed to move into the college dorms with Maria's financial help. She reflected on everything that had happened in 3 years, from janitor to senior developer, from invisible to inspiration, from taking orders to leading teams, from needing help to helping others. But deep down she was still the same person. The girl from the tough side of town who dreamed big. The seamstress's daughter who learned that hard work matters. The night student who practiced coding in old notebooks. The young woman who once had the courage to speak up even when she was terrified of being ridiculed. Only now she knew something she hadn't known before. She knew that her value didn't depend on the validation of others. She knew that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. She knew that a prepared and determined person can change not just their own life, but the lives of many around them. And she knew, above all, that the journey was just beginning, because for every door that opened for her, Maria made sure to keep it open for those who came after. For every step she climbed, she reached out a hand to pull others up with her. On Monday, she would walk into Alex's office and hear about the new proposition. She would probably say yes because challenges were her specialty. She would work hard, study, and dedicate herself, just as she always had. But in that moment, lying in the dark of her room, Maria just smiled. She smiled thinking about Bethany, who was studying for her first technical course exam. She smiled thinking about the 14 students in the social project who had that spark in their eyes. She smiled thinking about her mother, who had finally been able to slow down her work pace and rest more. She smiled thinking about David, who was studying business administration and dreamed of owning his own company. And she smiled thinking about herself, the girl who walked away, and the woman she became. The alarm would ring in a few hours. There would be code to write, meetings to lead, people to mentor, systems to protect. There would be challenges and exhaustion and moments of doubt, but there would also be achievements, growth, impact, meaning. And in the end, wasn't that what life was all about? Choosing to get up every day and fight for what you believe in? Turning difficulties into stepping stones? Being the change you want to see? Maria closed her eyes at peace with herself and the journey she chose to walk. Tomorrow would be another day, another challenge, another opportunity, and she would be ready. Because luck, after all, is when opportunity meets preparation, and Maria Ferreira was always prepared. End of story. If Maria's journey touched your heart, know that stories like this are born from the belief that everyone deserves a chance to shine. Maria taught us that talent doesn't wear a uniform, that determination conquers barriers, and that a single opportunity can change, not just one life, but transform an entire culture. How many Marias do you know? How many invisible talents are just waiting for someone to believe in them? If this story inspired you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share in the comments which part moved you the most. Your interaction helps us continue creating stories that inspire, move, and prove that the most impossible dreams can become reality when they meet preparation and courage. We'll see you in the next story. And remember, you can also be the Maria in someone's life or the opportunity someone is waiting for. See you soon.